That's what we do day in and day out. That's what gets us up every morning and gets us passionate to help each of the small business owners grow and scale their company. And that doesn't always just mean revenue. Sometimes it's just making it a more simple business to grow and profit. Sometimes it's about growing more time and more energy. So all of them are above are important. Now, as we talk about the skill of selling today and we get into the details of how to handle objections, just so you know a little bit more about my background. So I've trained over thousands in the skill of selling. Okay, so I've definitely got the repertoire, and I'm gonna bring some of my favorite tips and tricks here that I think will really, really help you get a good understanding of how to handle objections the right way. One of the things that's really interesting about my background, though, is I actually started as a poor performer in the skill of selling. It was, I would call it one of the worst hats when I first started my business in my first venture. I was really struggling at it. And my big reason was I couldn't stop talking. I wanted to sell everybody, and I had to learn the hard skill of listening at a young age. And since all that work in the last 15 years, since I started my first business, it's now become the actual best. Right? The skill has become the best in terms of what I work on. So I've sold as a solopreneur. I have led sales reps as the business owner, but I've also led the VP of sales who's overseeing the sales reps within the business. So I've got a really good eclectic view in, and I'm going to try to talk from all three of these personas because I know we have a lot of different attendees on the call today. Some that are probably selling nonstop on their own, others that are actually leading a few sales reps. They're just getting the business off the ground and scaled. And then others that have already scaled the business and are trying to figure out the right ways to navigate through their director or VP of sales that's leading their sales team. So I'm going to do my best to kind of bring the tactics and the resources today to all three personas, just so you know what to expect. Now, as far as expectations for today, I always set the same expectations. So stick with me here if you've been on before, but if you don't know this, we like to use the chat function. So go ahead and say hello in the chat function. Make sure it says all panelists and all attendees on where it says to at, but you're gonna wanna make sure, say hello. Awesome, we see some people coming in now. It's important if you have ideas or you have questions, use this chat, get in discussions. I've got several advisors that have joined on to help answer questions as we go throughout. So please take advantage of that. That's a big opportunity that comes out of these webinars. It doesn't have to be resources only coming from myself. We do have a Q&A though. So if you're somebody that says, you know what, Casey, I'd really prefer not to get my details out in chat, no problem. If you have a very specific question, navigate in your screen until you see an option that says Q&A. And on that Q&A, you can actually send in your own question. We check those after the webinar and we will get back to you with an answer, either from myself or somebody on my team. And then as far as polls, we are going to take polls throughout just to keep a pulse on the group. It helps me navigate because I can tailor the webinar ongoing to make sure we're getting the most value to all of you. And lastly, as always, we will have post-webinar resources. So make sure you stay all the way to the end so you can get a copy of the deck and the materials and everything else we have to offer. All right. So as far as we get into this training, one of the expectations I do need to set is what's called graduated learning. And you see this staircase, and what I want you to visualize is you are on one of these stairs when it comes to the skill of handling objections. You are somewhere, you might be up close to expert, you might be down just getting started trying to navigate this skill. It doesn't matter where you're at today. My goal for all of you is to push yourself to move two stairs today. That's what we're going to try to move, 2 stairs, which means you're going to find 2 very clear takeaways. It's not going to be rocket science. It's going to be simple, tactical, tangible things that you can implement right away when you're in this sales world or as you're leading your employees that are in the sales world. And on today's roadmap, here's what we're going to talk about. The first one, we're going to talk about the daring question. And you're probably going, Casey, what are we referring to? We're going to talk about the daring question that all of you have to face when in a sale and objections come. And I'll show you what that is in just a moment. I'm going to walk you through how to handle objections when you're on the offensive side, but also how to handle them when you're on the defensive side. Both of them are very unique and different when you approach. And I want to make sure you're clear on the differentiation. And then thirdly, I'm going to go a lot more into the defensive approach. I find most people sit with objections inside of the defensive side of the sale. And I'll speed up some different techniques that I use to help navigate that. And then lastly, we'll land on some toolkits, some shortcuts, and some resources you can continue the learning past just today. So let's jump into the chat here. I see all of you. This is great. How help me understand, what are you hoping to learn today? So go ahead and just write it in there. This is going to help me tailor the content as we go through today. So what are you hoping to learn? Why did you join this webinar to talk about handling objections? We're going to give everybody just a moment here to get some thoughts in there. So Matt, want to learn some of the common objections and what are potentially some smart responses. Lindsay Gray, I want to become a closer. Fair enough. Objection handling can help with that. A client pitch or proposal process. Okay. Alessia, I'm not going to talk through a process today, but I do have some resources I'll talk about at the end to hit that. Create more sales. Great. To get my skills and overcoming objections. How to close when it's a group decision. Awesome one. I have to write that down. I don't have content, but I'll do my best to come back and speak to that, Tara. How to surface and handle objections earlier in the sale. Awesome, Sam. For use inside the process. Thanks for the clarity there, Alicia. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. The good news, we're going to hit a majority of these, and you may have some others here that people didn't chat in, no problem. But this is as you can see, a very important skill. We all deal with this every day. So there's obviously a need. So I'm glad you're taking 45 to 50 minutes out of your time today to really develop yourself and figure out how can you take closing to the next level. So let's start with this daring question. And I'm going to get a little fun here. I want to actually know, the first question is, do you and your team handle objections? So let's launch the poll. That is the daring question. Do you actually handle the objection? Or when the time comes, do you actually find yourself not handling objection? Do you get nervous? Do you get fearful when that happens? So I've got some answers here for you. We don't. We're not as assertive as we should be. We try, but it doesn't often go as planned. We try, it does help our conversion, we find, and we are masters at handling objections. Let's see where the responses are. We're going to give everybody another 10, 15 seconds because we got a lot of people submitting right now. Just a few more seconds. Okay, so let's go ahead and publish that so we can see the results. So it looks like it's almost a two-way tie here between we try and it doesn't often go as planned, or we try and it does help our conversion. Those are kind of the two that we're seeing that have really articulated, what the end objective is here. So I'm just going to go ahead and end this poll here. So there you can see some of the results. There we go. So what this means is that we don't have a lot of people on the call necessarily that are not doing it. So I'm going to skip through that a little faster, and we're going to spend a lot more time on how do you do it? What's the better techniques of how to manage it? So thanks you for that information. And there's kind of a fun way to look at this, right? It's, Shakespeare in 1600 would have said to be or not to be. I look at it as like, well, do you handle it or do you not handle the objection? And I wanted to put some math and some data, and I commonly try to do that in these webinars to really help exponentially create in your mind why you have to handle the objections. And so I've created this chart for you, and see if you can follow me along. Let's say that in a sale, there's 4 objections. And these are the closing rates that you will experience within those 4 objections. So notice at objection 1, it's really the same closing rate. My findings have been if you handle it or you don't handle the objection, if the potential prospect only has 1 objection, I find it doesn't really matter. And so a lot of people will say to me when we're coaching through the skill, they'll say, well, I find it doesn't matter, either I land it or I don't, so I don't handle the objection. And that's true if you only handle 1 objection. That's right. But the problem is once you handle 1 objection, usually your prospect's right behind going, and what about this? What about this? And so you have to kind of get them in to that series of asking and fighting back and feeling comfortable having that objection with you. And so you can kind of see where this chart goes in terms of what I expect and what I commonly see as average closing rates when you see the objections handled, through each 1 through 4. And I'll take this a little step further, actually. You see where that line I just turned at in the middle? What we've found through coaching is that most prospects have, on average, 2.5 objections that you need to handle. So let's really slow that down and look at the data points there. You've got 40% closing rate if you do handle those 2.5. And then you should really only expect 17% closing rate if you don't handle. Now, again, this is average. I'm putting this over a generality of terms. So your industry may have very unique or very specific closing ratios, but for purpose of the principle, I think you can follow along with what I'm trying to share with you. I'm going to take this even further. I'm going to break down, we're going to use an example together just so we can all look at the same lens of 100 widgets. I don't care if it's products, packages, hours, whatever it is here. We have 100 widgets of our business this year that we are going to sell. And I want to show you the numbers just so you can see the exponential range that starts to get created. A closing rate of 17% versus 40%. Look at the number of proposals, the number of sales calls, the number of leads. And I just use general conversions for the sales calls and leads. But look at when you see that start to unravel, if the rest is all the same, except for that final close because you handled those 2.5 objections. Look how many more activities you have to do. And look at the hours spent. I just had some fun and kind of said, well, let's just assume maybe it's an hour and a half for proposals, 45 minutes for a sales call, and 2 hours to generate each lead worth of time for a sales rep. That doesn't matter if it's you as a solopreneur or somebody on your team. Look at the amount of time spent, over double. And to put that into even more math, that's 2.4 sales reps versus 1 sales rep, assuming a sales rep or yourself is working 2,000 hours in the sales field. So this starts to really help extrapolate the data so you can really identify how much time it really does add and how much how much it can really disable your sales engine if it's you or your team because you're not handling objections. That's how important this skill is. And the common response I hear is, well, I don't want to be an aggressive used car salesman, right? I'm sure, everybody's going, yep, I do not want to feel that way. I know those people. That's not me. The key is actually not to be aggressive. What you're looking for is you want to be assertive. Assertive is the mashing of their needs and our needs. And so if you're feeling like you're being aggressive, I'll talk a little bit more about the tactics of how to get away from that. But I need you to subdue those emotions and those feelings and have faith that you're going to have to push back and handle the objection. Because again, the data is so clear, right? And it looks like I skipped a slide there. Sorry about that. It's so clear. On the left, if you do not handle, you're talking about 2,700 of hours lost, and you're talking about $100,000 spent on more reps. That's the cost to you as the owner because of that closing rate. And then on the right, look at the gain. It's 2,700 hours gain. It's 100,000 in additional profit. Just so you understand the differences, just to really lay this out on, kind of a crystal ball. You have to approach this from a place of understanding the amount of resource, time, and money you lose because not handling those objections, what that means for the scale of your organization. And so I really hope I've helped you if you are a little weary or not sure if you can really push these objection handling techniques. Try to remember this data. It should give you the confidence to get out of your comfort zone, which is going to allow you to grow and allow you to see the fruits of your labor from the trial. So let's get into more of the actual content itself and how to do this. And I'm going to break down this offense versus defense approach. And there's this classic, I can't, right? There's this classic, I can't say that. Well, when you say it, Casey, it's okay, but I can't say that. We're going to have to cut out the T. We're going to have to get into the I can mindset today. Because as I walk you through this, there may be some things you go, wow, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable saying that exactly that right way. There's also an I can and I can't with your prospect or your end consumer. It's very important that you're also having an open conversation with, let's try to problem solve. Let's figure out how this can be a can opportunity versus a can't opportunity. And even saying something so simple like that up front in the expectations will help keep them their open mind that they can bring and be comfortable to bring whatever's on their mind, but also allow you to be able to come back and say, yes, I hear where you're coming from, but there's another way we could approach this to where we still can. Don't say, no, we can't do that. You want to get that out of your definition. Everything I'm going to teach you today will not work if you're a can't mindset versus a can mindset. So I'm going to take this to one of my favorite sports and one of my favorite players of all time, Jonathan Taves of the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm a big hockey fan if you know me personally. And I'm going to show you kind of an analogy of how I understand the offense or defense of handling objections. So let's assume that scoring, like in hockey, is the same as a sale. Well, it feels really great when you make a sale, right? We all know that. We all want the sale to come to us easily, but often if we have to work hard to get the sale. So we're going to look at scoring as getting the sale. And in hockey, there's this really important message. There's some data that's out there that pretty much says if you are leading by the middle of second period, there's the highest probability you are going to win. It's just very rare that teams come back and rally in hockey. It's much higher data than any other sport actually that's professional, that if you can get up in that first or second period, you have a really, really high chance of winning the actual game. We're going to figure out how to apply that in the form of offense to handling objections. Because what happens is when you wait to the end of the sale, this emotion starts to get heightened up, right? And you start to have the fight. And that's where that aggressive fear comes out at. That's when also your consumer and your prospect, they're fearful. They may not share the concern, which is why they randomly just disappear and you never hear from the prospect again. There wasn't the environment there that helped them, for whatever reason, feel comfortable to share openly what they were dealing with or why they had an objection to your service or your product. And so you have these two options, right? You have this option of, on the offense side, right? You want to go score. Well, the way to do that is be proactive, and you have to surface the objection. So instead of handling the objection, we're going to flip that to the offensive side and say, well, how do you actually surface an objection? And I'll explain a little bit more in the detail here in a moment. On the defensive side, you still have to do this though. Although you can try to play offense and you can try to surface every objection, but like every professional sports team, you still have to play defense. You do have to play both. So you have to be good at both. And this is more of that reactive approach. And this is where you're going to have to fight the objection, and you're going to have to learn the techniques of how to do that. So I wanted to get some common language out early as we got into this today, so you could understand the two very clear differences of when we're going to surface an objection and when we're going to fight the objection. And I'm going to walk you through both ways and both techniques of how I personally like to follow it. So we're going to get into an exercise here right away. So grab some note-taking material if you don't, or open up a new Word doc on your computer. And here's what I'm looking for you to do. I want you to write down, and I'm going to give everybody a few minutes. I want you to write down the 3 most common objections you or your team hears on a normal basis. So go ahead and just take a moment and write that down. What are the 3 objections you just commonly hear over and over again? If anybody's just joined, again, what we're allowing everybody to do is just write down what are the 3 most common objections that you hear in your sale. We're going to need this to go through the rest of our workshop and webinar here today. And if anyone's brave or bold, please go ahead and type these into the chat for us. Let us see what some of the examples of common objections. I know a few people were really interested in what were some of the common objections that people are hearing. Change, pricing, cost. Budget, oh yeah, happy with our current vendor. I see that one a lot as well. A lot of time and money, Now, Lawrence, we are going in another direction. One of the things that you want to make sure when you write down these common objections, and Lawrence, this would be a good note for you, is that, are you on the route? So just going a different direction, you don't know what that means. You want to make sure you follow up and say, hey, can you give us feedback? What does that mean? What direction are you following? Why did we lose the opportunity? Because you're going to want to make sure you narrow into the root of the objection. That's a little too broad. Price too high for service, can get the same for cheaper price. We are considering other activities. Okay, so a lot of cost and a lot of time. And I see some others kind of trickled in here that are a little different. This is great. So now you have your 3 most common objections. And, you know, Zig Ziglar had a good way of saying it, right? He said every sale has 5 basic obstacles: no need, no money, no hurry, aka urgency, no desire, no trust. Without those 5, right, you're never going to make a sale. So it's not surprising that majority of what everyone has written falls within these 5. Not all, but majority. And so the reality is you have to overcome these obstacles and whatever your common objections are. And the way that you do that is you pull it forward. You pull it forward into the sale. You're going to surface it. So what I'm asking you to do is ask direct questions early on in the sales process to start the conversation. So if you hear pricing at the end, I would challenge you to pull that forward and get that in the initial conversation without even sharing your pricing. And you may be thinking, gosh, how the heck do you do that? I'll show you here in a moment. But you have to slow it down and help people digest and have the conversation, because it doesn't matter what's in your head. It doesn't matter. They don't know near as much as you do about the industry. You are in the industry all the time. So you just think, how do they not understand? How do they not think this way? You have to educate them. They are uninformed. You must assume they are uninformed. And so you have to ask a direct question, not an open-ended question, a very direct question early on. And I'm going to give you some really good examples that I think will really help connect some dots here. So common objection, service is too expensive. Good thing I picked this one because it looks like almost half the group here in the chat shared that. So the service is too expensive. Let's go through some of these look like. Have you purchased this service before? That's a great direct question that's going to help surface this objection, get this conversation happening early on in the sales meeting. What are you expecting this to cost? I love asking that question. I find that what happens is that people will say, oh, I don't know. That's their initial response. And then I get to reply and go, really? Oh, have you never purchased this before? Got it. What did they just do? They just acknowledge they don't know what the pricing is, which allows you permission to ask, can you educate? Can you get them clear? Pull up your competitors, show them where the pricing is. Talk openly about why your pricing is what it is compared to your competitors. Watch what happens when they say, they stop saying, I'm going to go get more quotes, or I'm going to go look at other providers. It takes a lot of bold, assertive approach to be able to get into that conversation and have the confidence, but that's what it takes. They will smell, they will feel that confidence from you. Some other examples is, do you have a budget set aside? How much? I know a lot of people try to ask that, and I'm sure you're going, I've asked that, and they always just say, I don't know. I don't know yet. We're still figuring it out. But that's okay. One of the things I want you to shift your brain on is it's actually about you're getting them to process. It's not about that they didn't give you the budget. It's that you're making them think about it. And then if they say, I don't know, you go, great. Well, can I tell you how much you probably want to budget? Sure. And then you get to ask, does that budget fit? See how we're having the conversation candidly and tactfully up front, allowing me to be extremely proactive. Another example, how do you perceive the value or measure ROI for this service? Saying I was pitching a service. What a great question. You tell me how you're going to dictate the ROI in your head. You tell me how you're going to perceive the value. And this gets into a really interesting conversation when you ask this question, because what you're doing is you're removing the opportunity for them to ever tell you you're too expensive. Because now you're going to actually talk about what matters most. What will be the return from the service, or what will be the output because of the product or web app that was purchased? That's the conversation you should be having. If anyone is telling you, I don't like your price or you're too expensive, they're not telling you you're too expensive. What they're telling you is, I don't see enough ROI or enough differentiation of why I would pay that price versus this other price I found. And you have to shift that in your head, which is what makes it very, very tough. And again, remember what we're talking about here. We're talking about being proactive. You can ask these questions at the end, but do you realize how much more it feels like a fight when you're on the defensive side versus when you're on the proactive side? It just feels like you're partnering when you go through this. All right, so let's go through another example. Need time to think, right? That was another one I heard a lot of. We went in a different direction, project timeline. There's a lot of examples you all gave today that helps me think this is another kind of the second big objection that we all commonly deal with. And again, here's some great, very specific questions you can ask to help this. And again, you'll want to tailor them just a little bit and work with your advisor if you're working with us to do that. But by what date will you need to purchase by? That's an interesting question. It allows the consumer to have to think and say, I will want to purchase by this date. It allows you to check in to go, okay, well, that would mean we're going to deliver the product or the service by this date. Is that going to work for you? You can create urgency that way. You can pull forward their mindset of when it's going to happen. Why will this date be important to you? You need to understand why the dates are what they are. And then you can ask, can I hold you accountable to that date? Because I don't want you to start late. And then that negative viewpoint looks on our firm, although we're trying to proactively get in front of this. Again, notice how much easier these hard conversations can be when you're upfront and proactive. How do you think, a delay in your decision could alter things for either side? This really gets into that partnering conversation of, this is why I have to have an answer by this date, and this is why we're going to need to move forward on this date. So my job is to get you educated by then. Or are you open to making a decision quickly upon getting all the information needed? It's an interesting conversation, right? They say, no, we're going to take our time. It takes us 3 to 4 months to get through it. Okay, now I know how to navigate this conversation. Or they're going to say, yes, we will make a decision quickly. This is all ammunition that allows you to bring up and say, well, I thought you said this, when you get to the defensive side of the sale. But right now we're on offense. So let's put this into action, right? Because it's easy to be direct early on, right? That's the whole theme. And it feels like partnering. If you don't know what this picture is, in 2015, the Blackhawks just won the Stanley Cup. It was a big day in my life, all right? Maybe not in yours, but big in mine. And look at the picture. Look at the face of the Tampa Bay player. Look how pissed he is. He feels like he lost. He did lose. And he has to shake hands. I've always wondered, why in hockey do they not, in sports teams, do they not just shake beforehand when everybody would be super happy? Hey, good luck out there. It's going to be a great game. And then let them battle it out. I want you to create that mnemonic device in your head that you need to try to remember of why you want to pull these direct questions forward to help surface the objections. Because when after the sale, again, it feels like defense, it's going to feel more aggressive. So I think I've made my point here. So how do you surface this? Exercise 2, take those common objections. I want you to pick one. We only have time for one today. Pick one, circle it. And now I want you to write down 2 direct questions you could ask in the first encounter. And I don't care if you write down some of the ones I shared, but what are 2 questions that you could ask in that first encounter with your prospect that would help you make the sale as you try to surface the objection? And again, I'm just going to give everybody just a minute. And if you're bold enough, please go ahead and throw these into the chat room. It always helps people to see examples. If you have a really good question, I'm sure a lot of you do. Again, everybody, just a minute here to come up with their 2 questions. And again, if you're bold enough, please feel free to share some of those questions in the chat. I find that really helps other people just get different ideas. We've got a few starting to come in. Thanks for that. And we do need this question asked for my 3rd part of the exercise. So if you haven't written one down and said, I'm going to skip this section, don't do it. You won't be able to keep going with us. Awesome. These are great. Thanks, Tara. Thanks, Drew. Again, if you have a lot of pricing or you have a lot of time as your objections, again, just make sure you're focused on the root. That's a whole other conversation, a whole other webinar, but I can't stress enough that you're probably not showing value or you haven't created urgency. And the key to urgency is for time, just a quick tip as people are wrapping up, you're not trying to convince them to sell or buy when you want them to. Instead, what you're trying to do is navigate where is their buy date and how do we pull it forward? That's it. So if they're thinking they're going to purchase in a month, how do we get them talking about how they're going to purchase in 2 or 3 weeks? That would be a win. That's how you create that partnership to help create that urgency. If it's time, and again, if it's price, it's value. You're not talking about ROI. You're not talking about the output they can expect. That's the only way you'll ever differentiate yourself from other pricing on the market. Otherwise, somebody could charge $100, one person could charge $1 for a widget. And if you don't talk about those details, of course, you'll always lose to the dollar. Just, always. So keep that in mind. All right, so hopefully you have your 2 direct questions that you can ask for this objection. All right, and so I'm going to move over to the defensive approach now. So we've talked about the surfacing side, how to pull it up in the beginning of the sale, which this will help immensely when it comes to handling these objections. Now let's talk about what happens when you get to the end of the sale and they bring up those dreaded objections, and you have to answer that question of, are you going to handle the objection? Are you going to get uncomfortable? I'm going to give you some tactics of how to do this. And I want to actually, the first one here is llama. And so the idea is llama without one L, all right? And the way I look at this, first off, this picture is fantastic. But the purpose of llama is to give you just a simple kind of acronym you can follow that'll help you just trigger in your head, L-A-M-A, L-A-M-A. And here's what it sounds like, right? You've got listen. So L is listen. Are you able to listen to them first? And I mean actually listen, not what am I going to say next? That's what most people are doing. You have to actually truly listen and seek to understand. You have to acknowledge, right? You have to acknowledge that you've heard them. You have to make them feel comfortable, that you've validated back what they've said so they know that you've heard them. Then you have to make a statement, actually put together a statement that helps teach or educate them. And lastly here, then you ask another question. That's a really, really crucial part. So you're going to listen, acknowledge, make a statement, and then ask a question. So I'm going to give you some examples of what this actually looks like so you can follow. So again, I'm going to go back to this expensive because I figured a lot of people were going to bring up price today. And I'm going to show you what this sounds like. So the prospect replies just simply high level, generally here, you are too expensive. So how does a sales rep, if that's a rep or you as the owner, how do you respond? Well, again, first you listen, all right? I can't really show you that except for just to tell you to listen. But from there, acknowledge. So you are seeing value in our service, but you cannot move forward in your mind at the current price. Look at how I'm saying this. So you are seeing value in our service. I'm coming back saying, if my price was different, you would be going with me. You're really isolating and pushing the route that you're going to work with me. I'm not just saying, got it. You're saying I'm too expensive. No, I'm saying, but you are seeing value in what we offer. You're just not willing to move forward currently in your mind. Notice I don't say unless the price changes. I'm not saying that. The only acknowledgement is you feel in your mind, you think I'm too expensive at the current moment. See, these little tweaks make a huge difference in exactly the verbiage you choose to respond. So I've acknowledged, now I'm going to make a statement. Well, I can certainly understand money doesn't grow on trees, connect that I am of a similar mindset, and you don't want to overspend where you don't have to. I find we are very comparable, and the ROI our clients get is really, really good. So I'm starting to detach that price out of their mind, and I'm helping them hear a statement that educates them. Hey, I would encourage you to look at the ROI versus the price, because I know I don't have a chance on price. It's just A or B. I have to get to the apples to apples comparison. And now I have to follow up with ask a question. I gave you 2 examples here. What ROI would you expect at this price point? That's one way, right? Or how are you comparing our pricing to others in the market? Again, look at how these questions are kind of laying out. What it's doing is it's forcing them to bring forward their thought process and share it openly with you. This is where you want that open-ended question to come out. So it's more direct questions on the offense, but on the defensive side, when you're in this mode, if you can ask open-ended questions to get them talking, what you're doing is you're helping them process through it. So what you don't want to say is you're too expensive. No, I understand. No problem. I'll, maybe follow up if it doesn't work out. No, 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 no. You have a process now to listen, acknowledge, make sure they know you heard them, make a statement that gets them onto the right track, and then ask a question, getting them to partake in the conversation with you. So it's not okay, I gave you my objection, now handle it. And the customer sits there and waits as you try to sales pitch. Because if you pitch it on the defensive side, you're going to lose. You will not win. The way that you win is by helping them connect the dots in their head. You already missed that opportunity. You had the opportunity to create the partnership and win-win by surfacing. But on the defensive side, if you try to win, you will start a fight. And people want to believe they have all the information when you ask for the close because their assumption is you've given them everything they need to make a decision at that point. So you have to unravel that extremely carefully. So I'm going to jump here. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to pull us back to a slide because I'm just curious what we're looking at here. I actually want to launch our poll here of, do you have a clear list of objections and tactical responses documented? So I'm just curious. I just gave you a great technique of how to handle this. And I'm curious, do you actually have a list of all the objections and how to respond it for you and your business? And that can be for you, but also for your team if you have sales reps within your business. I'm just curious where people are at generally, as we've got a really nice big sample size here today of all different types of businesses based on the names I'm reading. We've got a lot of people still filling out here. Give me just a few more seconds here while we're capturing some of this data. All right, looks like we've got majority here. So let's go ahead and publish these results. So this is not surprising to me. This is what we commonly find when we are working with our clients. This is one of the first things you need to build. And I find it's very hard to build on yourself. Now, that is a shameless plug from us. We're talking about sales, so I feel the need to bring it up. But this is where we can really help, really support our clients, is by helping them build this, because it's always easier from the outside to help build it and help articulate the different strategies. And again, one of the techniques we can use is this theme of llama, which is why we do that. All right, so I'm going to jump back here and get us going. So again, listen, acknowledge, make a statement, ask a question. All right, let's go to the feel, felt, found technique. This is the second technique that I like to use. So I've showed you llama. I'm going to show you a different technique if you didn't like that one as much. And this is feel, felt, found. I've got a little bit of a model here that should help you, and I'm going to slow this down. So customer provides the objection on the defensive side. And now your job is to help make sure they know that you know how they feel. If they don't feel that emotion, which we're going to call empathy, they're not going to turn the corner, right? That's what I want you to think about when you see this model. Our goal is to help them turn the corner, but you have to help them know that you feel the same way they do and that you can resonate with the objection they gave you. If you're not slowing that down, which listening and acknowledging part of llama helps you do, you're going to have a hard time going to the next step. And if you try to sell too early, you will lose that sale. Now, the felt is very interesting. The felt part is crucial because it's not about what you have felt. This technique is about bringing in other past stories of clients or products that you've sold to, so you can explain what others have felt, providing social proof to back up what you're saying, just in case there's any trust issues that you haven't earned yet with that potential client or prospect. And so now you are going to explain that this is how others have felt. And again, to turn the corner, what you're doing is you're getting them open to problem solving. If we can get them open to problem solving with you, what you'll find is that then you can actually give them ideas. And instead of saying, this is how it will work and being matter of fact, again, you're on defensive side. You have to be very careful. You'll start the fight quickly. Instead, this is what others have found. So this is a great technique to share, to bring in other stories that are way more powerful than you just telling them your opinion. They know you have skin in the game. They know you make something because they make a decision. So you have to strip away that layer and kind of break through the third wall. So that way you allow people to go, oh, it's not them. They're actually telling me about other people that have had this issue, other people that have felt this way, and what they found and what they problem solved around to get the same output or ROI, depending on what the objection is. And the big miss that people have in this process is after they explain that, they don't ask a good question. And the good question is, can we sign a contract, or can we move forward, or can we go, whatever the next step is in your process? It's always going to be different depending on the business. But if you don't ask again and force them to say yes or no, you won't get that second or that third or that fourth objection. And remember the graph from the beginning of today, the further along, the more objections you get, the higher chance you are going to land it. Yes, you heard that right. The more objections you can get, the higher chance you have to land it. So I feel like so many people as small business owners, we weren't necessarily trained in sales. We were passionate about our product or our service, and then we're kind of put in the sales world, not only doing it as ourselves as a solopreneur, but if we've scaled into leading a sales team, and we find ourselves in that position where now we have to become great at sales, and it can be uncomfortable. And the way that you have to understand it is, if you do not ask the question, can I work with you again, and force them to say yes or no, you will not create the next objection. And therefore, with more objections, you'll get them more and more bought into working with you. It builds trust, it builds confidence that you have answers, or you have well thought out responses to their fears. That is the process of educating. Therefore, that is the process of landing more deals, products, whatever it is in your industry. So these are two of my favorite techniques. So again, let me explain what this one sounds like here. You are too expensive. Here's how you respond with the feel, felt, found. I can understand what it feels like to see a service desired, but pricing doesn't add up. I can understand that. You wanted to work with me, but the pricing just isn't adding up. Again, look at my word choice. I'm not saying it's over. I'm making them acknowledge back to me that they want to work with me. They want to give me the business. It's just pricing isn't adding up for whatever reason. And I know others have felt similar and have experienced a sticker shock. Again, I'm kind of throwing darts because I'm on defense now. My gut tells me maybe you've had sticker shock. You just didn't expect it for whatever reason. So I'm going to hit that one first. And many have found that the ROI received completely outweighs the cost. Would you be open to continue to explore this with me? Yes. Well, let me tell you a story. And now I'm into a conversation, and I'm not in this battle mode. I'm now actually going back and forth and working with the individual to try to make the sale. And that's what makes this work, this technique work so well. And one of the bullets I need to share is a kind of a best practice. You might go through this model 5 times on one objection. Let me give you an example. You're too expensive. I understand what you're saying. You're saying pricing doesn't add up. You may have had a sticker shock. Let me handle that. Does that make you feel more comfortable with pricing? They say, no, we're still a little too expensive. Yeah, no, okay, got it. So if there must be a budget issue. I know others have felt similar budgeting issues. I'm just cycling through the model quickly, and eventually I will isolate the root, therefore allowing me then to get the open conversation, so I don't have to guess and start throwing promos and doing what bad salespeople do at the end. Don't do that. All you're doing is diminishing trust. Instead, it's through conversation and persuasive selling that's going to allow you to get them across the line. So these are 2 really important techniques, and this is how we're going to kind of push this over the line. So you've identified your 3 common objections. You then took one and figured out what are 2 really good questions that you could ask directly early on in the sales process. Now let's assume you didn't, for whatever reason, you didn't do those first questions, and you're now on defense. You're on the back end of the sale. I want you right now to take a moment. We've got the space. And I want you to just write down either llama or feel, felt, found. Pick which technique you like the most. I've got 2 options for you. And I want you to actually write out for one of these objections, because this is what you need to do for probably 20 to 30 objections within your sale. Every objection you've ever heard, you should have this documented. But for today, we're going to write down one. And I would love when you have it to go ahead and throw it into the chat room if you have the opportunity. So take a moment and write this out. And I am going to shoot back in between the two slides here. So that's the feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. Others have felt the same way. This is what they have found. And then ask again. Or the llama, listen, acknowledge, make a statement, ask a question. So those are the two techniques. And again, if you just came back to our webinar here, I see a couple other people have recently just joined for whatever reason. We are asking you to take your item and write out llama or write out feel, felt, found. Give everybody another minute here to try to write that out. All right, and is there anybody willing to share in the chat? If you can, type it up just to get a few examples in there for you of one of your objections, either a feel, felt, found, or a llama laying that out. And I'll let them kind of come in as I'm going to keep moving forward as we start to get towards the end of our webinar here, because I think that if people could hear and see just a few more examples, it will really help ingrain it for people of how they're going to implement. Now, my biggest tip, and attaches to both techniques, you have to stay quiet when handling objections on the defensive side. I've done a lot of sales coaching with a lot of different owners in a lot of different industries. And one thing that I consistently see, we talk too much. And remember when I checked into the beginning of the webinar and explained my background and my experience, this was one of the biggest things I struggled with as well. I just felt if I kept talking, I would help sell the deal. And in fact, all I was doing was talking myself out of the opportunity. And so it's crucial that when you isolate and handle the objection, either through llama or through the feel, felt, found, that you slow down, pause, sit on your hands, put tape on your mouth, whatever you have to do. Do not talk. They are thinking. Be comfortable in silence. Look them in the eye with a smile if it's in person, or on the phone, stay quiet and don't be alarmed. They're processing. If you speak, you will only give them an out when you're at the very end of the close. Do not forget this tip. If you walk away with anything, do not forget this final big tip that I continue to see people struggle with: how to stay quiet when handling. So we do have some other toolkits and resources. So I want to walk you through what those are, especially to our clients here that has access to all of these on the back end of the site. So these are my big five. If you are trying to be great at sales and trying to close, and you're really focused on increasing your closing rate, please go grab handling objections, go grab needs probing, benefits matching, next step selling, and trial closing. Trial closing will really help. It's another tactic around handling objections because it allows you to measure the temperature of a prospect or someone you're selling to before you actually make the pitch. It can create some more comfortability if you have more of a passive approach. And if you are a client with us, please take down your learning and share that with your advisor so we can get that added to your roadmap as we continue to work with you each month. And for our advising solutions, for those of you who are not clients, you can sign up to actually get partnered up with an advisor and take advantage of 2 free hours to work through some of these items. So if you're interested in that, you can select that on this poll and let us know, and we'll reach out. We need to have just a quick conversation with you, but that'll help us figure out which industry that has similar industry backgrounds to you, or sorry, which advisor has similar industry backgrounds, as well as which advisor has the right skill set for you. So please let us know if anybody be interested in that, because we're happy to do a follow-up. As a client, make sure you're taking advantage of these client perks, right? Come to our peer development group. It's next week, or sorry, it's our next one is March 12th. My co-founder, Dan Grauman, the VP of training, actually runs that peer development group. You'll get to have this same theme, but you'll actually get to break up into small groups. You'll actually work with 4 or 5 owners. You'll get to do the talking. You'll get the best practice share. It is an awesome aspect that you have to take advantage of if you're a client with us. Our big conference in September, it's starting. We're going to be launching here in the next few weeks. It's going to be really cool. Remember, as a client, you get to come to the conference for free. So we can't wait to see you there with hundreds of other business owners. We have half-day workshops that you can look in on the schedule on the back end of the site, as well as don't forget about all the great Resource Hub docs. So again, Cultivate Your Success. Our next half-day workshop is tweaking my sales process for epic growth. So we're going to go to the next level of how to do sales. We're going to keep with this theme because we've had so many people asking for it. So please in the poll, let us know if that's something you're interested in. Just select there. We'll go ahead and register you and you'll get sent a calendar invite so you don't forget. As well as then on the CEO webinar series, April 9th, it's going to be picking the right priorities as a business owner. So that's what I'll be teaching on the 9th at 11 a.m. Central. I'm not going to talk about how to do time management. For those of you who've maybe seen me talk through that, I'm actually going to talk about how do you know what are the right priorities to work on as a business owner? How do you truly know that's the best use of your time to get the end result? I'm going to really slow it down for the owners on the call. And that wraps us up. Right in time here, we've got 5 minutes of your life back. Please select what options you'd like. And then also, if you would help me, this really helps me figure out what content to build. Let me know in the chat, what were your biggest learning points? What were those 2 things that I asked you to remember or learn today? Because that's going to help me really get a good understanding of what's working and what's really adding value so I can continue to curate more and more content for all the great owners within our network. Submit any final questions. Have a great rest of your week. And don't forget, 2.5 on average is how many objections you have to handle to get the sale. Good luck.